I'm always super excited to do a little talking, but also most importantly listening, because I spend a lot of my time doing, speaking to Gary's talk-do balance here. So, and have just been really excited about what I've heard so far this morning. So, as David kind of set up, I'm going to walk through a little bit of how free range does our work, and really try to empower you with some how-tos and things that you can start to practically apply right away. I'm sure a lot of folks in this room are doing great work, and I think, like most of us, are also find ourselves falling prey to some of the common sins of marketing, as we put it. So spend a little time on that. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, and I can see there's a little bit of cropping happening. I didn't mean to only half represent in the lower left our dog Bruce. But this is who we are. We're Free Range Studios. We were founded 15 years ago by a journalist and a filmmaker who wanted to tell stories for organizations and companies trying to make the world a better place. So we do that through brand and campaign strategy, through videos, through digital experiences, identity, and collateral. We're in 2 offices in Oakland, California, and I head up the office in Washington, D.C. We're about 35 folks. So again, today's goals for me are to give you some tools to avoid some common marketing sins, which we also captured in a book that we came out with last summer called Winning the Story Wars. And I'm also going to help you, as you learn how to identify these sins, think about what some tools are, some remedies for these sins look like. But the first thing I'm going to do is take a step back and just share with you kind of the methodology around that we use to create what we call brand storytelling based on empowerment marketing, an empowerment marketing approach. And this approach calls on some great scholarship by people very bright, like Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey. How many folks in here familiar with Hero's Journey? There's always lots of hands, these audiences. Carl Jung's work on archetypes, just how we recognize certain archetypes. We're hardwired to do that. In addition to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we think about kind of this kind of scholarly grounding, but more importantly, what we really had to figure out was when we were creating hits that just went viral and were really successful, we had to figure out how we were doing that. So we retro-engineered this methodology that we've been using now for several years to great effect for organizations like ACLU, Greenpeace, kicking off an exciting engagement with Mother Jones. We've also been fortunate to work with a couple of folks in this room, Stonyfield Farms in the past, in addition to Patagonia. So the first rule, and this is usually the moment of kind of disappointment, but hopefully relief too. The first rule of our methodology is that you're not the hero of the story. Your audience is the hero of the story. And certainly we heard that in the panel that preceded us. I think this is intuitive, but also something that we see so many brands, so many organizations not really getting and reflecting in their communications. Like all of us, these heroes feel frustrated, disappointed, challenged. We love our long showers. How do we live in this world? How do we kind of try to make our way through this world? Well, we look for mentors, right? We look for people who can show us how to be in this world in the way that allows us to become the best versions of ourselves. And that's what every brand, every organization, every cause has an opportunity to become, is that mentor that all of us are looking for to become the highest and best versions of ourselves. We also don't meet people. If you meet a storyteller, you don't meet someone who's speaking in some anonymous voice of God kind of way. You meet people and you meet storytellers who are relatable to you. They're captured by a tone and a personality. And so this is, again, where we draw on Jung's work around archetype. A brand that is a rebel sounds and looks and speaks very differently than a brand who is a muse. It's a different kind of mentor. So one of the things we really think about is, who are your heroes? Absolutely. Who are your audiences? But also, who are they looking to meet? Do they want to be roused by this disruptive agitator who's a defender, or do they want to be kind of inspired by opportunity that speaks to my expression that you might discover in a muse mentor? So these are a couple of the kind of key players, the characters in our stories. But we also have to think about what it is that mentor gives that hero. What's the lightsaber What are the ruby red slippers? What is the thing, the gift that we actually give them? The one-for-one program, if you will. We call that the brand gift. And I was really excited to hear how there's so much emphasis already this morning in how we actually empower people to go on this journey with us. Because at the end of the day, it's not about just saying, we're doing awesome things, we're saving the world. It's about saying, how do you help us write this story? How do you engage in doing that? How do you make better choices to become who you want to be? So we think about what is that thing? What is that thing we give them? What is that gift? So all these things are the things that are happening on the surface of the story, right? We've got characters, we've got this kind of offering, there's conflict, but there's a layer deeper, and we think about what's the moral of the story. If you're a brand, there needs to be a core message. Goes back to that idea, you have to choose a thing. What is the one thing that you're going to reinforce in every tweet, in every annual report, in every experience that someone has when they come to your website? So we help organizations identify what is that moral of your story. The moral of the story that the free-range brand tries to express in the world is the idea that great stories make great change possible. So we're constantly trying to reinforce that. We don't get it right every time, but hopefully we're always working toward reinforcing that core idea in everything we do. The other aspect of our methodology, the fifth element, the last element, is this idea that all of these things are really an expression of our values. And we've heard some conversation about values already. But when you think about the stories that you hear, and you think about, for example, the moral of the story that a storyteller might offer you, and the takeaway is better safe than sorry, you can make certain assumptions about what that storyteller values. They probably value security, process, right, safety. And if I'm a storyteller and if I tell you a story and that moral is he who hesitates is lost, I value very different things. I value adventure. I value risk. So we try to also identify, what are those core values that you hold as a brand that you're constantly trying to communicate to the world, but that also, more importantly, represent that connection point with your audience. So it's not just about, again, like this one-way outward communication, but how are we connecting up with what our audiences care about in order to allow them to become more of who they want to be in the world? So the core values that we hold at Free Range, again, are optimism, courage, and empowerment. And we use those as internal metrics for performing employees, or evaluating employee performance. We have them up on our walls. We also try to make sure that we're communicating those in everything we're doing, everything we're putting out in the world, whether it's for clients or on behalf of our company. So they're absolutely central to the way that we think about our work and also the actual work that we do and try to connect up with in the world. So if I do things right, hopefully you'll feel more optimistic and more courageous and more empowered at the end of this. So I want to just take a big step back and recognize something that I think is really powerful and is really the opportunity, right? Like all of us are here as communicators. And the reality is that storytelling has shaped societies. These myths that kind of are the glue of our societies are ones we've created. They persisted over many, many years. They've evolved for sure. But when you look at, an ad like this, a story, Uncle Sam, he's calling on values of thrift, contribution to a society. To be a good citizen meant to kind of do your part. In this context, very different time and place. After World War II, we had a ton of manufacturing power in this country. It had to go somewhere. Marketers, very good at what they do. We can figure out a way to leverage that manufacturing power. And we're going to ask you not to be a citizen in the ways that we used to yesterday, but we're going to ask you to be a good citizen and buy something. And there's a huge flip in this communication. One of the most successful ad men of all time who never spoke a word, the Marlboro Man. So powerful. All of a sudden we're asked, engage in these behaviors, buy things. Here's a brand who's holding out an opportunity for you to become awesome by buying a thing. So what gets me excited is the fact that I have an opportunity to work with some of the most courageous changemakers out there who are saying, let's use that power that we use to create, frankly, the sustainability mess that we're in, to solve it. And I think we can do it. But I think it's helpful to recognize some of the things that we want to try to avoid. So I'm going to spend a little time focusing on what we call inadequacy marketing, which is a lot of the stories that we've been shaped by as media consumers. You're lousy without me, but buy this thing, you'll be great. This makes you afraid, I'll trigger that, and I'll make you engage with my brand. It's a fundamental difference between a successful transaction with a customer and building a relationship with someone who is part of a community or part of a citizenry that is really reclaiming a lot of the problems that we all have the power to solve. So the first sin that I'm gonna talk about is the sin of vanity. And I'll say, again, that all of us struggle with these things in different ways. It doesn't matter whether you're marketing a car, whether you're marketing a cause. But there's this inherent challenge, right? Especially people in this room, we love what we do. We are passionate about it, and it's really easy to forget that the hero of the story is not you. So this is, I think, a great example. It's actually double vanity in a way. So it says, congratulations to Audi for winning South African Car of the Year 2006 from the winner of the World Car of the Year 2006. It's a BMW ad. So this sin here, I think, is what you're seeing is just, I'm amazing, period. This isn't about you. I don't know if anyone in this room is inclined to buy an Audi or a BMW after this ad. I personally, not motivated. But we see it all the time. The second sin that I want to just highlight is the sin of authority, which is an interesting one, and I actually chose this, this particular example on purpose because authority can kind of go either way, right? Like, I want my Apple Genius to be an authority. That's what I expect. I go into the store, I've got something that's broken, I can't fix it, I want them to be brilliant. But when you're only relying on facts or figures, and you're not really connecting from a point of empathy or point of humility, you end up with an ad campaign like the one that came out last fall. How many folks are familiar with this ad campaign in August of 2012? A lot of people weren't, because it was pulled very quickly, because the Apple Genius came off as this super condescending, irritating person. He was like, of course you don't know how to work this computer, you silly customer. And it was so irritating, and it was so counter-brand that Apple could not scrub it from the internet fast enough. It's one of the reasons I can't show you a video, because they're not online anymore. And it was a huge misstep for them. But I think it shows you how, if you're not connecting with people from a place of empathy or humility, you lose a huge opportunity to leverage your expertise and to invite them into a conversation that helps them care about what you care about and what you're smart at and what you're trying to do. The third sin is a sin of insincerity. And this, I don't know if people are familiar with this ad. The ad copy at the bottom is, if there is no planet, where will you drive? Yeah, I like to let that sink in for people for a second, because it's so crazy to me. Yeah. So I don't think there's much more I need to say about this, but I just thought it was wacky. But you see it all the time, this idea of just false pandering. Oh, I know, the green demographic, they'll love a big green ad. And if there's no planet, where will they drive our awesome, not particularly fuel efficient vehicles? Great, but they won't think about those things. Just selling the consumer the audience is short. So the fourth sin that I'm going to touch on is puffery, and this is where you're just making these totally exaggerated and really subjective claims rather than really relying on objective truth. And so are people familiar with this Avon Kiss Cancer Goodbye campaign? So Avon, great, obviously, it's who doesn't want amazing cosmetic manufacturers who are right in the target demographic of women who care about breast cancer research. It's a great thing. They've raised a ton of money for it. They released these lipsticks that actually had known carcinogens in them for their Kiss Cancer Goodbye campaign. So that was a problem. So this is an example of someone saying, like, we're saving the world. We're helping to defeat breast cancer by causing different cancers. It's a problem. The fifth sin is one that we call just gimmickry. So this is where you're using kind of cheap laughs. Instead of using humor, I think the Applegate actual video is a great example of how you can use humor so powerfully, right? Like, nothing unites people across cultures and times like laughter. I mean, that is a great way to get people's attention. It's something we try to embed in our work when we're doing it really well. Are folks familiar with this Groupon ad that came out 2011 Super Bowl? This is Timothy Hutton, who's saying, Tibet is in trouble, can save Tibet. And they also make an awesome fish curry. and you can, get it even more cheaply by buying into Groupon. It was a huge blunder, but they were thinking that they were going to have this kind of clever hook with a Super Bowl audience for Groupon and totally exploit the Tibetan people and the actual plight of what's happening in that country and doing it. And this ad, I mean, there are a number of these ads posted on YouTube. So this, I think, one had maybe 500,000 views. But I kind of did a crop on the dislikes and likes on this. So 326 likes to 1,397 dislikes. Again, humor totally backfiring on a really important issue. So those are 5 sins. I want to take a pause here because I think I will definitely say free range. I just I think like last week I read some copy that someone read in the student. I was like, this has vanity all over it. What are you doing? And I had to exit out. So we all do this, right? It's not a matter of not doing it. It's a matter of catching it in time and being mindful of it. So I wanted to just have people take about 10 minutes and just turn to someone next to you and just think about what sin do you think your brand is most vulnerable to. So you want to do that? We've got a little cheat sheet. We'll try to keep this to 5 to 10 minutes. It's always good to be reminded I'm in good company of a lot of sinners. There's a lot of conversation. Can I get 3 people to volunteer an observation about themselves or someone else? 3 folks to quickly just volunteer. Anyone want to admit to the sins? No? All right. This doesn't have to be compulsory. This isn't confessional, but I think it's helpful to be reminded. I'll shift to the solution statements. So what we call as a counter to inadequacy marketing, we call empowerment marketing. So again, this is why we emphasize so much how can you actually engage people in creating the world they want rather than emphasizing this momentary transaction and really just kind of tricking that base of our brain into doing a thing once. And this obviously classic example, I think, and a great remedy example for the sin of vanity. And this is what Dove's well-known communications campaign or ad campaign has done, is fully making the hero the story, and really embracing this idea that beauty is not only inside but it's outside in ways that we don't really see very often at all. And Dove is like a pretty good-looking soap bar. I mean, as soap bars go, it's kind of like nice and ergonomic, and it's like you could make a beautiful ad out of that bar of soap, but to do this is a whole different thing, and clearly it's been incredibly successful. Another remedy that this is from the free range portfolio and case study client we've been working with on a complete overhaul of their international brand and communications is Greenpeace. And this I offer as an example of a remedy for the sin of authority. It's part of their Detox fashion campaign. So we're reaching out to, in this case, younger women primarily, who are shopping at places like H&M, Gap, like so many younger women do, and don't have any idea, what impact their decisions are actually having in terms of the planet and the world. So we kind of did this very cool, like kind of anime style video where we were showing, you can kind of see there's this this kind of meme out there, this idea that you can kind of tell the color of the fashion by the color of the rivers in China, which is a real thing. And so these rivers were running purple. So we kind of show in this video that purple's all the rage, and you can tell because all the water is purple in China. And helping people really see, like, there are other ways that you can make choices about fashion. We've heard about some great ones this morning. But I think, really trying to create a point of emotional resonance and also kind of just educating people, for leveraging authority and the ability to educate, but in a way that really helps people see the impact of their decisions, rather than just having it completely hidden, I think is one way that you can use authority. This example also from the free range portfolio and an engagement that I know I've been not as directly involved in, but really been proud to be a part of. The team around with Annie Leonard are people familiar with Story of Stuff in this room. So I think she's a great example, and if people haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to check it out. But I think she's a great example as a remedy for the sin of insincerity and really speaking in a human voice. Annie Leonard was an activist for 20 years. She researched the materials economy, where stuff comes from, where it goes when we throw it away. She was the least popular person by her own kind of admission at every cocktail party because she was walking around talking about garbage, right? And like that doesn't make you super popular. But she realized, more importantly, no one was listening because she wasn't really telling a story. She was just like, oh my God, things are terrible in Bangladesh like this, and they're terrible in India like this. They're terrible in China. And so we worked with her to take kind of what was a 2-hour pretty academic presentation. She presented at a staff retreat for us, literally in an alley with a chalkboard in Berkeley. And we were blown away. We were like, this can't be in an alley in Berkeley on a chalkboard. Like, this needs to be on the internet. So this was 2009. We had no precedent for knowing whether people were going to sit through 20 minutes of content. And her goal for this, she's very modest, and I think this is also, again, why her ability to speak in a human voice is so compelling. Her goal was to have 50,000 people watch this. She's like, if I can get 50,000 people to watch 20 minutes of me talking about garbage, I will be blown away. And she was blown away in 36 hours, and it just kept going. So it hit 12 million people in the first year, and has spawned a whole network of stories. And again, this is Annie, this one person who walks out onto this set. The style, actually, the whiteboard style was not done at that time. No one else was really using it. We did it in part because it was really cost effective and we had a lot of media to create. But she walks out in the opening frame, if people have seen this, and she has an iPod on. She's like, do you have one of these? I do too. And I got to wondering what happens when I get rid of it and replace it with a new one. And so she creates this point of empathy. She admits she likes long showers, you know, her analogous long shower. And we all are immediately there with her. And she is a wonderful storyteller these days, and was not in the beginning. So, remedy for the sin of insincerity. Remedy for the sin of puffery. I think there are a lot of examples. This one was an interesting campaign that I've been part of with a group called Global Zero. They're working to eliminate nuclear weapons worldwide. They needed to find a message that could kind of capture what they were doing. One of the things that I didn't mention, but I mean, really, pretty much any client that we work with has a theory of change, and if they don't, we work with them to identify it, and so that also helps create that discipline around what do we choose to do, what are the levers that we think that we can best contribute to applying pressure to. In the case of Global Zero, they had spent 5 years kind of getting the global military political elite on board with this idea that not only should we, is it possible to eliminate nuclear weapons, but we're going to create a plan to do that. And it's a really good idea because they're expensive and stupid. And they were trying to just reframe the movement from one of the elites to a grassroots movement. And we had to come up with language that could really work all over the world and engage a young population around it. And so we came up with this idea about make history, demand zero. It works in every language. It is anti-puffery, I would hope, I felt anyway, and has been a really successful universal message for them. They've been applying, getting rid of nuclear weapons has challenges in the media cycle, I will admit, but we were also able to engage a lot of celebrities around this and keep that message grounded. One funny story was we did a video earlier this spring, and we had all these celebrities record little clips of them saying, why they want to eliminate nuclear weapons, and kind of gave them some scripts, and we had them all sign off. I'm Michael Douglas, I demand zero. I'm Whoopi Goldberg, I demand zero. And we're at a shoot, and Robert De Niro goes, it kind of sounds stupid. I'm Robert De Niro, I demand zero, like the rhymey weirdness. So that was the one place where the universal message started to get a little bit funny, but it's a good time. And I'll land on the final remedy, which I think, everyone in this room knows. Amazing story. I mean, very few brands, I would say, can quite pull this off in the same way as Patagonia. I think it was obviously sweeping kind of moment in our industry where we're like, wow, to do this is so awesome. But that idea of being able to be memorable with something that is really unique and inspiring and counterintuitive is a great way to kind of combat that sin of gimmickry. So I hold this up as one of my favorites. And also, I think the subcopy is actually really important too. This idea that this season shares some values. It's not just buying a coat. It's actually making a statement by not buying a coat. I also am sure people in this room are aware too that sales actually went up after this advertising campaign, but I think in part that's because more people started to recognize, wow, this is a brand that actually stands for something. This isn't just a brand that's trying, this isn't like the Patagucci that I hear about, who's trying to maybe, trying to get me to be part of being a consumption culture. They're actually for something that I really believe in. And in the same way that you talk about, you don't need a bumper sticker on a Prius, you don't need it on Tom's shoes, I think Patagonia really stands for something in a world of a lot of products that don't. So, excellent example of gimmickry being combated. So with that, I leave you with a few opportunities to embrace empowerment marketing in your own communications. Would love to have anyone here who is not familiar with our book check it out. Tell us what you think. There are some free downloads. If anyone is interested in them, definitely shoot me an email. I'll be happy to follow up with some one-pagers. We also do an e-workshop. We are kind of doing more and more of these workshops. We really take that empowerment value very seriously. We're not trying to pretend that we can make every video or create every online experience, and we don't want to. We really want to teach more people how to do this work themselves. So to the extent that we can help share what we've learned and also learn what you know that we don't yet, would love to just keep that conversation going. All right. I think we'll wrap up. Thanks so much and enjoy lunch.